You might not love how we got here, but I'm here to tell you the Pirates already have the bones of a contender. Today, we're talking gratitude, rotation dominance, and why a little spending could make next year something truly to be thankful for.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back, everydayers. And if you're new here, welcome to Locked On Pirates, your daily podcast for all things Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan, former editor over at Steel City Pirates. I've been covering this team since 2019, and I've been a fan of them since I was about 4. So a very, very long time. And obviously, I will stick with the Bucs for life. Before we dive in, a huge thank you to all of you who make the Locked On Network the number one podcast network in the land. That's because of listeners like you, and December is going to be big because we're launching the Everydayer Club, so stay tuned for details on that. Here's what we've got on tap today. Why we should be thankful for what the Pirates already have, even if we didn't love how we got here. We'll start with the rotation and work through the core pieces. Segment 2, Thanksgiving special. We're going to make a Pirates feast. We're going to build a holiday table with Pirates players, past and present. Segment 3, the latest payroll rumors and what they really mean for this offseason. Let's get into it. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, look, I get it. Last season's record wasn't what anyone wanted. But if you zoom out and look at what's in place, there's a lot to be thankful for. There really is. I think about entering rebuilds and what I always had focused on every time the Pirates tried to do this. And the first thing was always, man, you got to get that pitching staff because it's the one thing you can't afford to fill. You can get by with everything else. Mediocre hitters, you get it. As long as you get that pitching staff, that's going to be the hardest thing to build. And if you fail on building it, the whole thing will fail. And here it is, the one thing the Pirates have succeeded to build. And I feel like many of us have forgotten. Paul Skenes and company are both the reason that we're so mad that they're not better and the only reason we should really expect that they should be. This pitching staff that they put together, in and of itself, shows a level of competency that we do not give this front office credit for. We just don't. We very flippantly say like, they've done well with the pitching, but you really got to get this. Okay, that's all valid. All of those things. But we have really allowed this pitching success to just kind of fade into the also ran category, which I don't think we should be doing either. This rotation, Paul Skenes, Mitch Keller, Jared Jones at some point, Bubba Chandler, Braxton Ashcraft, Mike Burrows, Hunter Barco. How are they going to go about it? Johan Oviedo. How do they go about building it? What does the overflow do? This is a group with pedigree to spare. This isn't a whole bunch of guys that did okay last year and you kind of hope that the magic markers, twigs, and duct tape that they held everything together with last year works again this year. That's not what we're hoping for here. We're hoping that the pedigree shines through. We're hoping that everybody continues to take steps. We're hoping that the guys that are already great continue to be even better. This is a rotation you would have a hard time on paper improving on from the outside. Sure, you could convince me to go ahead and take Blake Snell in exchange for one of my younger players. But I think as far as rebuilds go, this outcome, all this pitching depth, all these pitching options, even more coming beyond that, all of that piled up at the very front of what makes your franchise something to worry about next year. It's exactly what we would have told them to do if we had blindfolds on. And I think that is what leads the day. That's what gives you your optimistic look at this year. If things are going to happen this year, it's going to be because this pitching staff coalesced. It came together. It's multiple waves of starting pitching talent and relief talent all coming together and executing under a new pitching leader. I mean, like they really have a lot of the base laid to do something terrific here. And yes, they got to hit a little bit. But guys like Bryan Reynolds and Oneil Cruz, they've both shown they can be much better than they were last year. Henry Davis was a 1-1 pick, and not for the glove. You have to feel he's going to bounce back a little bit. Spencer Horwitz, he's at least what we hoped he'd be, at least the bottom rung of what we would have accepted. And I think there's more there. Second base is covered. Even if you don't believe in Nick Gonzalez, chances are you want to see Nick York. And I could even throw Jared Triolo over the wall at you if you need an extra guy to compete for second base. And that's all before Termarr Johnson, who's got a chance to push for it this year. Connor Griffin has a real chance to start and be a difference maker on this team this year from the beginning. It looks like they might actually spend a little this offseason. Guys, we may not have liked how they got here or even where they are now, but there's enough here to realistically think a good addition or two makes enough of a difference that maybe next year we can be thankful for something a lot more traditional than, like winning baseball games. I'm not trying to sell you a false bill of goods, and I'm not trying to tell you to ignore the problems. I see these problems too. I do. All I'm telling you is that if we started from scratch and said, this team needs to rebuild, I would absolutely tell you the first thing they have to tackle is starting to develop young pitching. They've got to be able to get in that front line pitching on their own. You can't go buy it on the marketplace. You'll never be able to compete in free agency, and it's too expensive to trade for. Voila, here we are. It's exactly what the Pirates needed to do. Ideally, you're doing both sides at the same time, but I've rarely seen them succeed at either. Even the last time they were successful in the last decade, they didn't develop a pitching staff. They went out and got it. They got lucky with some of their signings. They actually paid for some of their signings. They traded for some guys that were cast-offs elsewhere. I'm not begrudging how it came together, but it also wasn't in its purest form the way a rebuild works. The way that one worked is the Pirates had a stable of reasonably successful young position players coming along. Andrew McCutchen, Neil Walker, Gregory Polanco, Starling Marte, starting to get those guys coming up. So they invest a little bit of money in some pitching and some trades and a catcher, and they built around it so that they could see if they could get to 500. And it wound up getting real close. And then they tried it again for a couple more years and made it. This team is kind of right there. And they've done it in a different way. They've built the pitching side of things. The traditional barrier to entry for small markets. You can't compete because you can't spend like us. Pitching is what costs the most. You can't afford it. Nah, boo-boo. We're better than you. Well, Pirates developed it. They developed it. Now it needs to shine. It needs to lead. It needs to be the feature of this team. It needs to be what we're all thankful for. But in some ways, step one to understanding what we do have is admitting not everything has been a complete disaster. They've done some good things. This pitching staff first among them. But there are enough bones in just what's left around the diamond. It's not inconceivable to feel pretty good about putting a couple pieces onto this team and seeing them do something. Something that can actually support that pitching. Speaking of Thanksgiving, let's have some fun with this next segment. Grab a plate because we're going to build a Pirates themed Thanksgiving feast. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride that hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to the fourth quarter big comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game interesting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com and sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates, part of the #1 sports podcast network in the country, Locked On Podcasts. We're thankful for that and for you, our everydayers, and for making me your first listen. Now, speaking of Thanksgiving, let's carve out some fun. If the Pirates were a Thanksgiving dinner, who's the turkey? Who are the sides and who's dessert? Spoiler alert, in my dinner scenario, absolutely nobody is putting raisins in the stuffing, okay? So if that's you, turn around and leave right now. Here's the concept. If the Pirates were a Thanksgiving dinner, who's the turkey? Who are the sides and who's dessert? So first up, the turkey, centerpiece. Now we're going historic, right? We're going throughout the history of the team. And I think like you have to almost make this as close to a Mount Rushmore as you possibly can without calling it Mount Rushmore. But this is the centerpiece. This is what everybody looks at and says, that's the Pittsburgh Pirates. I have 4 names here that all fit the bill. And since I'm a guy that likes more than turkey at my Thanksgiving, I want turkey and ham, and I want some London broil. I mean, I want like some different kind of meat options at mine. So I'm going to go with 4. Roberto Clemente. It's so easy. It has to be. Honus Wagner. I mean, if nothing else, if he isn't the best baseball player that ever lived, he's definitely got the most expensive baseball card. So everybody knows who he is just from that. I would then go Andrew McCutchen. I think Andrew McCutchen has, for a long enough period of time, inscribed his name into this centerpiece conversation. And then I know it's early, guys. I know it's early. I know it is. Paul Skenes. I think Paul Skenes has already put his name on the annals of one of the best Pirates of all time. I really considered Barry Bonds, but I didn't feel like arguing with you guys about steroids. And honestly, it's impossible to mention his name without you guys talking about it. So that's where I'm going with it. Now, the mashed potatoes, the sides. This is if you ask my wife, this is Thanksgiving. Okay. She'd much rather have a plate of sides and never even discuss having a turkey. And I don't understand people like this, because for me, it's the leftovers I love most are the turkey. I mean, I will eat it as a sandwich. I'll do all kinds. I'll make soup with it. So the sides are important to some people. I get it. So for the sides, these to me are the role players. These are the guys that did something special or probably went unheralded while they were here, but they were a bigger part of things than you could possibly imagine. So I think for me, this is guys like Bill Mazeroski. That huge home run felt like an entree, but man, that was more like my standalone mashed potatoes doing some heavy lifting, right? I think, man, Scrap Iron. You got to go with Scrap Iron, right? He was a big role player back then. And I know you guys are going to give me flack for not including Willie Stargell too in that in that entree territory. I'm going to give him the king of sides. He is the dressing to me. He is the stuffing. He's the soul of the meal. You got to have stuffing that goes through everything. He is the family. He is every bit the side, the star side. Willie Stargell. But man, like modern day AJ Burnett fits into this category. He's like that spicy like corn salsa side that your weird aunt kind of brought and everyone looked at it funny, but it was the hit of the entire meal. And then you got like your green bean casseroles, your guys that like nobody really wants to celebrate, but man, you absolutely had to have them, like Josh Harrison or Jordy Mercer, right? You had a ton of guys like that. Easler back in the day, just fast people that would. Candelaria probably fits into a nice side. Interesting guy, ton of flavor. I love comparing people like this. How about the desserts? Desserts are just the sweet stuff, right? These are like maybe you were the best player for a very short period of time or did something exceptional for a minute. I think desserts are always like the sweetest part of everything. And to me, that is the end of games. I have to go closers here. Mark Melancon and David Bednar are both desserts for sure. They were putting exclamation points on the end of so many games for us for all those years. Jason Grilly during the period of time when it was awesome. How could you go anywhere else than Teak, right? I mean, Tekulve obviously was like the king. I mean, we've named an award after him now for reliever of the year in the minor leagues. I mean, those are the desserts to me. Those and weird, like one-off performances from guys that you pick up like in an off year, like Reggie Sanders that just came in and hit 30 some home runs out of nowhere in a 1-year prove it free agent deal with the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? Matt Joyce, another guy that just came in here and just went off out of nowhere. Nobody even knew who he was, right? The Pirates have had some success with some guys like that. And when you do, there's nothing sweeter. It's the best dessert ever. Guys like Isaac Matson turning out are a nice dessert. Sometimes a really nice dessert is a guy that you kind of like washed your hands of and thought was done for, that kind of turns around and figures everything out and becomes way better than they ever were. And I hope that we have a couple of those this year for the Pirates. Nothing could be more important to make this an important and good meal in 2026 than having somebody like Henry Davis become the tastiest dessert on the tray. We're a cookie table country here in Pittsburgh, right? All of us Yinzers appreciate the sweet stuff. I think the Pittsburgh Pirates have put together enough for us to say that we can feed our family. I don't know if we've got that hit side dish or not, though. Connor Griffin could wind up being that meal that everyone talks about. He could wind up being the part of this whole thing that everyone walks away going, oh my God, I will never have a Thanksgiving meal where I don't feature that entree ever again. We'll be like that cool grandpa that smokes a rabbit or something. And everyone's like, oh my God, smoked rabbit. That is the new entree for me. Connor Griffin could change this whole recipe. Because the one thing the Pirates don't have, you know how you have your Skenes Day? That could be considered dessert too. That once every 5th day you get Skenes Day, right? Well, when you get a position player that comes on and takes off and really starts barreling towards superstardom, You got to remember back to the Andrew McCutchen days when he was really in those MVP runs, back for what it looked like when you had arguably, if not the best player in the game playing for you. It changes everything. It changes every game. Every single game, that guy could do something incredible. It doesn't diminish having a guy like Paul Skenes, and I certainly talked up building that pitching staff in segment 1. But segment 2, when we're talking about building that complete meal, man, you got to have the offensive side of it. And that's really what they need more than anything out of Connor Griffin. And we would never be thankful for anything more. Now let's talk about something that could really spice up this table a little bit, huh? Money. NFL season is back. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a real hassle. Between K's, long login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time for last night's Steeler game just a couple hours before it started. Saw tickets on there for about $1.50. Good luck getting those in advance, right? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Before you start passing the gravy, make sure you're following me on socials. At GaryMO2007 on X, Gary Morgan on Facebook, or Pirates Fan Forum on Instagram. You can, of course, find the Locked On Pirates handle anywhere that you find podcasts and communicate with me as regularly as you like. So reports are floating around that the Pirates might open up payroll to the tune of $110 million. It's not exactly what I've heard, but here's what I do know. There is a willingness to spend more than last year. What does 110 million really mean? I mean, it's not going to turn us into the Dodgers, but it could mean one impact bat, maybe another. Bullpen could really get some beef, some upgrades on depth pieces. You know, for instance, if they were to decide they want to bring back a Tommy Pham, maybe they legitimately do bring back a Tommy Pham as a bench role. You know, if they pair that with the core that we just talked about, this team could look very different and very competitive next year. But let's talk about the rumor itself, because if you've listened to this show for a long time, and many of you everydayers do, you know that I kind of haven't really changed my prediction for the payroll this year. It's going to be 100, and I felt like it was going to be 100 the whole time. That has been what I heard. I kept that even as others were telling you that it was going to drop down to 87 or whatever this year. Some said that it was even going to go further than that. And then recently, Dejan Kovacevic reported that he had been told that they were toying with going up as high as 110. Well, guys, I'm still not going to change it. It's still 100. It's what I went with when we did our week Project 83, where we were doing all the different shows where we were talking about ways that we could put a competitive team on the field. It's what I went with at the time, and it's what I still believe. I think the 110 figure, though, I think it comes from a place of not thinking they're going to be able to move Mitch Keller for what they thought they needed. And if they're not going to move that salary, I think the reason that they're discussing it is because Ben Cherington needs to have an alternate plan in place should he not be able to make a reasonable deal that makes sense happen for Mitch Keller. I think he wants to be able to kind of be assured he's still capable of going out and doing something. And that takes a little bit of an increase. That's theory number one. Theory number two is Bob Nutting doesn't want to see them trade Mitch Keller. And I think it was maybe explained to him a little less gently that unless you give me some more payroll, we're going to return the same damn team as we did just last year. And I think while I could still see an avenue for that to be an improvement, it's certainly not going to be the period full stop playoff scenario that Mr. Williams just painted so kindly for the fans. So those are my two theories on why that sort of thing might be leaking out now. And it has to be considered that because they didn't go on record, their name's not out there. I do believe the source. This is Dejan Kovacevic's reporting, by the way. I do believe the source. I mean, hell, I work for him. My other podcast is on his site, so it's not as though I think the guy's a liar. I just don't believe. I don't believe that they have some magic figure like that. I think it's more of a contingency plan for what if. I think in their heart of hearts, they'd really like to trade Mitch Keller for one big bat that they can plug right into the lineup and maybe a toss-in prospect. But I don't think they want to pay Mitch Keller plus for anything. And I don't think they should have to. If Mitch Keller is not deemed valuable enough to bring you back a major league bat, then I think that's where you have to enact that contingency plan of not going forward with doing something stupid. He may work himself into more value. He may be in a situation where, listen, he's a good pitcher and everyone sees it. But what we saw as a really reasonable contract is exactly that. It's so reasonable that it's hard for people to find value in. It's just about right for a guy that's given you an ERA north of 4. And you can tell yourself that he's valuable because of the innings, and he is. And you can tell yourself that he's capable of better because he is. And you can tell others those things too, but that's not going to change the package that comes back for you. And this isn't an asset that you can afford to just flush because it's not going to come without pain. You can't just trade this as a salary dump. That would be setting an awful lot of things back. And now you're relying fully on kids. And that's not smart either. So I think if you do it, it's got to be a measured exercise. You've got to get a good piece. And I think that marriage is probably even looking a little more difficult than it was. Second thing I kind of wanted to touch on in this segment a little bit, if I had a few minutes left over. That's why I didn't mention it specifically in the roadmap because I didn't know that I was going to get to it. But I'm seeing a real thirst for other teams, non-tenders and whatnot. And I can see that. Okay, there's some interesting guys out there that got non-tendered. Like Jonah Heim is a guy that has been probably proposed to be traded to the Pirates for each of the last 3 or 4 seasons. Well, now he's been non-tendered by the Rangers. They've also non-tendered Adolis Garcia. Adolis Garcia has power, plays the outfield. Pirates could do worse than Adolis Garcia. But just because Adolis Garcia has been non-tendered, do not confuse that with a waiver, okay? Don't confuse that with a waiver claim. That's not the same. I hope you understand that. And I think the reason I say that is a lot of the comments that I got about it are, well, now that you can have him for nothing. Well, not so much nothing. I mean, he's still going to be a free agent. And presumably, if he's a guy that's really going to fix anything as you propose, there's going to be a bidding for him, right? I mean, his arbitration figure was probably going to be around 10 million, maybe a little less. He did have a down season last year, but they don't generally like to give you decreases in pay and arbitration. So that's why his estimate's probably up a little bit. But you could probably get him in your stable for 8 to 10 million. Now, am I fine with that being a guy that's here and plays outfield and, maybe somebody outplays him and he becomes a bench role. Sure, I am. But the Pirates may consider that starting money. Again, I can't sit here and tell you that Adolis Garcia wouldn't be a better swing at a pickup than Tommy Pham. I can tell you some of his numbers are probably headed in the wrong direction. And while he's just about the same age as Bryan Reynolds, I just don't trust him as much to kind of start trending back in the other direction suddenly. I think you might get, that I'm in a contract year resurgence from the guy. I think that's something that you could see. But if you can get it done, sure, go get him. But I'm not sure I want that to be one of my big pieces. I don't want that to be something that I focus on. I still want them to kind of go back and peruse, trying to get like something like a Cody Bellinger done. And don't be afraid of giving Scott Boras his opt-outs or whatever. Like, who cares? Give him his 1-year payday and let him opt out. Like, who cares at all? Especially going into what we kind of know 2027 is going to be. Like, there should really be just no fear in that at all. Just do what you got to do. Go and get some players. They've got the money either way, it sounds like. And that's what I think this report confirmed. 110 million basically tells me they're trying to keep their options open. They have X amount they want to make sure they get done, and they want to make sure they can reach that goal no matter which direction they take. One's going to cost a little less, one's going to cost a little more. That's all. And I don't think you're talking about like a gigantic difference either way. The needs are the same. I think they know they need an outfielder. I think personally they have their sights set a little higher than somebody that's been non-tendered. So I don't think you should look at that as your first option. I understand why you are, but this team looks like they're willing to put a little bit more on the table than they normally are. So maybe set your sights a little higher. Let's really try for that trade. Like let's go and make sure that the Rockies are 100% sure they want to keep everybody that that they have. Let's go and make sure that the Angels still want Joe Adele. Let's do some other investigation before we just go that route. 110 is more. I think it's plausible. I also think I'm going to keep mine around 100, and that's where I'm going to continue to plan. Y'all are welcome to take it however you want, but that was fun. I'll try to keep it that way as the week rolls on, and I plan to put out 5 shows this week regardless of the holiday. So catch up when you can. If you have to miss a couple of them, I understand completely. We're normally pretty serious about Pirates baseball, gobble gobble. Somebody has to be. Let's go Bucks.